Hi there and welcome back. This is Jennifer McGuire and I'm thankful you're here. Today I'm sharing with you some more backgrounds created using the gel press along with products that most stampers have. So we'll be using inks and background stamps. We'll just do some different backgrounds showing how to get lighter effects or darker effects, and then we will also take some of those gel press backgrounds and step them up by doing more layered stamping on top. I will first start out by doing all the backgrounds and then we will turn them into cards. Please keep in mind that I am not an expert on using a gel press. I just approach it from a card making point of view and try to find ways to use it with supplies I have. I do have a playlist for my gel press videos up on the top right here if you want to check it out. Okay, so I like to take my gel press out of the package and then stick it onto something as I use it. I usually just stick it onto the top of my MISTI. That way I can rotate it around, but you can also just lay it on your work surface. Now, the gel press is a tool that you can use over and over again for amazing mixed media techniques. Again, I just use it for more of a clean and simple look and with the products I already have. So that's what you'll be seeing today. In addition to the gel press, it's good to have Brayers to do the techniques we're doing. I highly recommend the Holtz Brayers. They're the two sizes you see here. And the nice thing about these Brayers is they are just firm enough to really transfer ink well. So if you're using stamping ink, I recommend these Brayers over others. I've just had better luck with them. I'm focusing on using dye ink for today's gel press techniques. These are the type of stamping inks that most folks have. I'm using Simon Says Stamp dye inks today, but whatever brand you have should work just fine. Now you can apply the ink to the gel press in different ways, and I'll show you the differences as we go. One thing you can do is just take the ink pad and just drag it along and apply the ink that way. Doesn't matter if it's smooth, we'll fix it up later. Or you can take your ink pad and dab it along, which puts down more ink. So it's up to you. If you want a softer background with your ink colors, just drag it. If you want more intense color, you want to kind of dab it along because you can see more ink ends up on your gel press that way. I'm using 3 colors here, like a purple, a pink, and an orange. Now to make this smooth and blended, I use the brayer and you can see I'm going up and down and I'm going side to side a little bit. I'm doing it quite a few times and that will blend it nicely. I then will take an uninked background stamp and lay it right on top. I press over it just as if I was stamping with the background stamp, but there's no ink on this. When we remove the stamp, we're lifting some of the ink. And now I can press a piece of cardstock on top of the gel press and then press my hand all around. I want to transfer as much ink as possible to that cardstock. Now this background stamp, I can stamp onto another piece and it'll be a multicolored image. I'm not using those in today's video, but remember you can use those. By the way, this white cardstock is just regular white cardstock. Any would work fine. Okay, let's remove the piece from the gel press and check out the beautiful background we get. Now this is very intense because I put a lot of ink down. And I will give some tips to make the blending a bit smoother if you want to get a really smooth result. But first, let's do a lighter version using the same inks. So if you want a lighter version, just drag the ink pad because that puts down less ink onto the gel press. Before I dabbed it, this time I'm dragging it, but the same colors. Now I'll take my brayer and I go back and forth. So you can see how I kind of move it side to side too, which causes the different colors to blend. Now once I'm done, I can go ahead and take the same background stamp, which I've wiped clean, by the way, stamp that onto it. Then when I pull the stamp away, I'm lifting away some of the ink. I can press cardstock onto it and we have a softer result this time because I put less ink onto the gel press. Same exact ink pads. Now, if you try this technique and you find you get some lines, some harsh lines from the edge of the brayer, this is a trick that I like to do. After I put down a bunch of ink onto the gel press, I take my brayer and I'll go back and forth, which you've seen me do many times. But watch, I kind of start in the middle and then I go a little bit to the left and then I'll go a little bit to the right and I'm going back and forth. Now, I start with a pretty firm application here, but then I get lighter handed. And as I get lighter handed here, I'm looking and making sure there's no edges left or lines left from the brayer. So that's what I'm looking at there and why I'm kind of doing it slowly. So I start out with a little bit more of a firm hand as I use the brayer, and then I lighten up until I'm barely touching it. And that way you can get a beautiful blend without harsh lines. So I'm doing the exact same process as I did before. This time I left out the purple. We'll press this. Remember, I have this stamp that I could stamp onto another piece. I'm just doing it on the back here because I don't intend to use it. But watch the gorgeous result you get. I'll do a few more here and mention a few other things that people have asked about. Some people have said when they put the ink down, it kind of bubbles on the surface, so you get kind of a bubbly result on your cardstock. If that happens, try dragging your ink pad to apply the gel press. Another thing you can do is make sure you use this type of brayer. It seems to work really well for using with dye inks. Also make sure you go back and forth quite a bit, as you see me doing here, and you end with a really light application of the brayer, so you really get a smooth look. And finally, use your gel press a lot. The more you use it, the better it seems to work. So make as many backgrounds as you can, and you'll end up getting beautiful, smooth results. Love this one. And remember, it doesn't have to look great around the edges because as a card maker, we're going to kind of cut out the center, so we only need a portion of it. So I'm going to do one last one using these colors in the stamp, but I find when I start using my gel press, if I do a bunch the same, I can kind of get a feel for how the inks are working and how the technique is working. Once I'm comfortable with it, I can move on to some others. So I like to practice a little bit first, and I can use all of these backgrounds. This one happened to be one of my favorites, super smooth and very light because I dragged the ink pad instead of dabbing it. Okay, so let's just take a look at some of these backgrounds before we move on. So you can see the difference between the left where we drag the ink pad for a light application and the right where we dabbed it. So I just put more ink down by dabbing the ink pad along. All right, let's do some more. This time I'm doing some purple, teal, and blue. And I have a more geometric background stamp. Now, most of my examples today are thin lined images. So you can see they have like a lot of detail to them. I like to use that with my gel press because the gel press does a great job picking up that detail. But I'll show you a background stamp with a little more solid area in a bit. If you do not have background stamps, you can also use clear stamps. Just put your clear stamp on an acrylic block and just stamp onto the inked gel press with an uninked stamp and do the same technique. I just find background stamps super easy to use. So with this background, I put down a lot of ink, used the brayer, and then I kissed it or stamped it with the background stamp that didn't have any ink on it. And look at that beautiful background. Now I'll do the same, but this time I'm putting down less ink by dragging the ink pad. I'll do the blending. Notice how I go back and forth until I can see the colors blend. I did wipe off my stamp. I'll press it right on top, remove it to lift away the ink, and then stamp it onto white cardstock or press it onto white cardstock. And look at the beautiful soft look. So it's fun to be able to get different looks out of your same ink pad. You could ink your stamp before you press it against the inked gel press, but I like the look of lifting it away so the pattern looks kind of white. But it is another option. I'll share that in another video. Now, one of the reasons I have really enjoyed using the gel press in the last year is because you can make so many backgrounds so quickly. While I had these inks out and there was still ink on my brayer, I just used the other stamp, the floral stamp that I used earlier with the pinks and the oranges, but I did it with this color palette. So grab a bunch of background stamps, whatever you have, whatever inks you have, and make as many backgrounds as possible. Then you can easily make cards later on. But I will also show you a way to step up these backgrounds and give them a more layered look. I really like how this technique allows you to get a soft background or a vibrant background with the same products. All right, here's the Simon Says Stamp Shine background stamp. I love this sun, and I thought it would be fun to try with this technique. So I put down two colors like a peach and an orange. You can see how I'm blending those together and then lightly finishing it to blend it off. And now I press the uninked stamp onto it. And once I've done that, I can remove it, which again, I could stamp off onto other cardstock, press cardstock onto our gel press, and look at this fun transfer. I just love how soft it is. It looks like a smooth resist look with a lot less work. So this shows you don't have to have like a repetitive background. Really anything will work. All right, now this time I am using all the same inks, all Simon Says Stamp dye inks, but I'm using a cling background stamp that has more solid areas to it. This is the Simon Says Stamp Leaves background stamp, an old favorite of mine, and you can see it has some solid leaves. You'll get different results with any images that have solid areas over the ones I've been using so far, which were kind of outline detailed images, but it does work and give a cool effect. Here I've blended the colors together. You can see how I'm going back and forth, making sure I don't have any harsh lines from the edge of the brayer. I'm taking the uninked leaf stamp and pressing it down over it. Now this has a lot of solid areas, so I'm kind of moving my hands around on this. If you stamp it kind of lightly, you'll get a more bubbled look, which you'll see in a moment. If you stamp it firmly, it's a little bit cleaner, but it does give a different look than regular stamping. So there I stamped off the extra ink onto the white cardstock, and look how beautiful that is. It's a great way to get a multicolor image. But what I'm really going for here is the gel press print. So I'm pressing cardstock onto that, and check out the fun results. Now you'll notice the background is very smooth, but the leaves, those solid leaves, have like a textury look to them. It's such a fun and fast technique. So let's do another one. This time I'm applying a lot more ink. So this is going to be really intense. And when you put this much ink on the gel press with a stamp that has this much solid area, that kind of bubbly look on the stamp image intensifies. So it really gives a fun effect. Remember, after lifting off that stamp, you can stamp the image, and look at that. That's a great way to get a multicolored image too. So if you don't like your gel press print, you might like that one instead. All right, I'll take a piece of cardstock and press down onto this and check that out. Super cool, that look of texture on the leaves, and then the background is smooth. If you want it to be a little bit cleaner looking, use less ink like I did on the last example, and as I will in the next one. This one was a lot of ink. Now there's still ink on my brayer and still ink on the gel press, so I just thought I'd go ahead and add that back onto the gel press from the brayer without adding any more ink. I'm going to wipe off my stamp here, then kiss or stamp the stamp onto the inked gel press, and then we'll get a much softer look. So this is kind of a second generation gel print, which I think is a great way to get those soft backgrounds that we often like with some of our more bold focal point images. So I'll stamp this stamp off onto white cardstock. That's going to be super light. But now when we take the white cardstock and make a print from the gel press, look how beautiful and soft that is. So the less ink you use, the more clean your image will be. But if you want to get that kind of textury look, use a lot of ink. It's really fun to be able to use the same products but get different looks based on how much ink you use. So far we've made these pretty quick backgrounds using our gel press, but I wanted to show you can step it up and create kind of a layered looking background. Now here are some of the pieces that we just stamped the extra ink off onto. I'm not going to use those in today's video, but I wanted to mention there's a lot of white space in the background on this. If you want to, you can take another stamp and stamp on top of it. This piece on the left, I just stamped with a light blue ink, a background text stamp. See the background there? And it just kind of pulls the background together, softens it up, and then you can just add a simple sentiment to it. So you could just stamp another background stamp on top. But today I wanted to show you how you can line up your patterns. See the background here? You can see the little arches in the white that we did earlier, but then I stamped on top of it in the blue to get a really cool layered effect. Let me show you an easy way to do this. Stick with me, it looks a little confusing at first, but I promise it's not hard. So I have my Misty stamping tool here, and I have a background stamp. Now I also have a piece of clear acetate. You can use any packaging, but I just used the clear piece that background stamp came with. So it came stuck to it. I'm going to use that for this technique. So the acetate is there in the corner of my stamping tool. Now I'm going to ink up this stamp with whatever ink you want. The darker the better, actually, because you'll see it better for the technique, but I just did it with blue because that's the color I'm going to use later on. Now you won't see it really well, but I'm stamping on the acetate. It will smear if you touch it, so be careful. We're just stamping it there temporarily. So I'm going to hold this up so you can see. I'll put white paper behind it. See how the pattern is on that clear piece. So this is basically a temporary guide to help us do our background layer stamping. All right, so now I'm putting one of our gel press backgrounds in that I did using the same stamp. I want to layer up my pattern, but I want to line it up and make sure it creates a neat effect. So here's how to do that. In the corner of the stamping tool, I'm putting that clear piece that we stamped on. I'm putting it all the way in the corner, and it stays in the corner, the clear piece we stamped on. Then behind that, I'm sliding in that gel press print that we made. Then I just move the gel press print until it lines up with the stamping on that clear guide that we did. I can shift the print over to the left or the right, but I always keep that clear acetate that we stamped on in the corner. Once I have the gel press print where I want it, I just tape it into my stamping tool, ink up my stamp, and then stamp it. By having that guide, we know exactly where the stamp will stamp on our background. In this case, I just slightly shifted the rainbows kind of down a bit. So I'll have it looks like white rainbows with a shadow right underneath it. So I shifted it ever so slightly. If I tried to do that stamping on my own, it would have been really hard to line it up. So by using that guide that we created by stamping on the acetate, it really helps with lining patterns up just right. So I'm stamping this a few times just to intensify the blue ink I used. I should have used a darker one, but instead I just stamped it a few times. And see how you can see the white pattern that we did with the gel press? And then slightly shifted down is the stamping we just did with the blue. So let me show you a few more examples of this. I think the more you see it, the more it'll make sense. And this can be really helpful when you want to get layered stamping just right. All right, so I'm taking that clear guide. You just put it right into the corner of the stamping tool. It stays in the corner. You always keep it in the corner, and you move your print behind it. So I'm moving it around until I like where the rainbow patterns line up. So I know where I will end up stamping this. This time I'm not offsetting a little, I'm really offsetting quite a bit. So we have lots of arches layered on top of each other when we stamp it. When I'm happy with the overlap between the two, I tape my gel press print in place, remove the clear piece with the stamping, then ink up our stamp and stamp it. When you're done doing this technique, you can clean off your acetate or your packaging, whatever clear piece you used, by just cleaning it up with a wet cloth, and then you can use it over and over again. All right, so check this out. See that overlap pattern? It completely changed what looked like a bunch of rainbows into a different look. A wonderful way to get new looks out of your background stamps, especially geometric ones. So I was able to line that pattern up to create a completely new look, using that clear stamped piece as a guide. By the way, I always like to trim down my prints so they look nice and clean on the edges. A lot of times I like them even better after I do that. Okay, let's do this again with a different stamp. So I have a piece of acetate there. This time I'm taping it along the bottom into my MISTI, and I'll use that as a hinge, that tape there. Onto that clear acetate piece, I'm stamping the sunshine. You'll see there's white cardstock in there. That's just so you could see it better in the video. So now I have the sun stamped onto the acetate. Again, don't touch it, it'll smear. We just need it there long enough for us to do the technique. So the acetate stays where it is. It's got the tape along the bottom. You can either put the acetate in the corner like I did before or tape it like this. Sliding the gel press print that we made behind it. And you can line it up however you want. See how I can move it around and line it up so it's a little offset or overlap, whatever you want. Once you're happy with where it is, you'll just tape your gel press piece in place or use the magnet. Then you'll flip that acetate piece down. You could remove it or flip it down. I like flipping it down because it'll stay put for the next one. Now you ink up your stamp and you can stamp it on your background and it'll stamp right where you planned it with that acetate piece. And there, that just adds more interest to that sun background. Now with this example, it would have been really hard to take that sun background stamp and stamp it right on top and line it up like we did without using the clear guide. There are some other techniques for lining it up, but this is the one that I find most effective. I should have used a darker ink when stamping on the acetate so you could see it better. That's something to do if you have a hard time seeing it. But hopefully you could see it enough to see that I was just lining it up, and we'll do more examples. Okay, so I still have that acetate in place. I'm just using a wipe to clean it off, clean off my stamp, and let's move on to another stamp. I still have the acetate taped in there. We're going to use it with this one. So this is that delicate flower background stamp from before. I think it's so beautiful. And now I wanted to take one of the backgrounds we made with it earlier, but add layering to it. So stamp it again on top. By using this technique of stamping on the acetate and using it as a guide, I can make sure I like how it layers up. So there I stamped with the pink ink onto the acetate there. Again, that white cardstock is in there just so I can see it better. Now I'll slide a print underneath, and I can move that print around as much as I want until I'm happy with how the flowers overlap. I wanted a really layered look for this, and this worked out really well. So now I just hold my gel print background down with a magnet, flip the acetate down, ink up my stamp, and stamp it. And it'll stamp exactly where I planned, thanks to that clear guide that we stamped on. Now I love this. I love all those detailed flowers layered on top of each other, and it'll make a great focal point on the card. I don't have to add much else to it. I really liked this one, so I did a few backgrounds with this layered floral look. This time I did orange ink for the second layer. So you can either layer two stamps together, so do one stamp with the gel press and then stamp another on top, or just use the same stamp again, as I've been doing here. So check this out. I have a bunch of backgrounds ready to go. I do like to trim them down because I feel like it gives me a better idea of what it'll look like on a card, or you can die cut from them. Some of these I stopped after I used the gel press. Others I stamped the additional layers on it. If you are ever feeling stuck creatively and need to get your creative juices going again, I encourage you to try using a gel press. It is so much fun to make these backgrounds. Now let's turn some of the backgrounds into cards, and I have some ideas for how to show off these patterns we just made. Let's start with this example where I used letters to show off the fun patterns. This is the Simon Says Stamp Large Outline Thanks die. I've used this one before. It really makes for a fast thank you card. Now I just die cut it from white cardstock, and watch as I hold it over this gel press background. This is just one layer. You don't see a whole lot through the letters. See how just a little bit of white outline? But if I put it over one of our layered ones, where we had added stamping on top, there's a lot more interest in those letters. So by adding additional stamping layers, you can add more interest to a background that you intend to die cut into smaller pieces, or just allow portions to show. There are many ways you could use this outline die. You can see you can use it to die cut your letters up there on the top, but the fastest one is to just cut the outline from white cardstock and glue it onto one of your backgrounds. I was able to do 2 cards like this from one background. So I just trimmed off the excess, and notice that die also cuts little outlines of the letters, which you could pop into place if you wanted to. I left them off for this example because I wanted more of that stamp and gel press background to show through each of the openings. Now I finished off this card off screen. It's a very easy one to do. The overall size of this is about 5.5 inches tall by about 3 3/4 inches wide. I just cut my note card to be a little narrow, so it fit nicely with the thanks in the center. Now you can see I trimmed down that background so a little bit of the inked background shows around the edge of the thanks white block too. Now it's kind of hard to see in the video, but the background of that note card around the thanks is white cardstock with a pierced pattern on it. I use the Simon Says Stamp Detail Petal Plate die. I just think it adds interest to a plain white background. I also use Simon Says Stamp sentiment strips to add a couple sentiments between the stacked letters, and also some small die cut gold butterflies. Remember that die does create the shadows for each letter, or the outline of each letter, which you could pop into place, as I did here, but I decided not to use it on this card. But the nice thing about that is when you die cut with this, you end up with lots of pieces you can use for many cards. All right, here's another thanks card. This was really simple to pull together, but I wanted a lot of that layered floral background to show. I cut that panel down, and I added it to a white rectangle that I cut with a Simon Says Stamp stitched rectangle die, and added it onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card. For the thanks sentiment, I used the Simon Says Stamp Big Thanks die set, which is one of my all-time favorites. I cut the shadow from white cardstock and the word thanks from gold glitter cardstock. I added that to the card along with the Simon Says Stamp etched laurel leaf die that I cut from white cardstock, and another Simon Says Stamp sentiment strip. Those are pre-printed sentiments that work great when teamed up with word dies like this. And then finally, I finished it off with a few small butterfly die cuts. By keeping the card simple and only using white and gold die cuts, I allow a lot of that background to shine so that you can really see the layered stamping that we did. Here's another example that's similar, but instead of a leaf, I used a butterfly. Now, I wanted to show you how you can take an open full butterfly and make it look like a side butterfly. I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Detail Meadow Butterfly die. I cut it from white cardstock, and I'm folding it in half. I'll put some foam tape between the wings, and then I'll close it. But when I close it, I don't close it lined up. I make sure the back wing is up a little bit higher than the front wing. That way it looks like a butterfly landing from the side. Very easy to do, and it kind of changes it up. This works great if you want to use a butterfly, but don't have an area large enough to have it open. So the side view is fun too. I cut an additional butterfly, and I'm just gluing the front wing on top just to give it a little more dimension so it'll hold up nicely in the mail since I put foam tape behind it. Now I can glue that to my card wherever I want. Now I did add a little butterfly body, and that is from the Birch Press Basic Butterfly die set. And I cut off one of the antenna. That way I could move it so it looked like a side view too. So there you can just glue that right on top, and you can take the other antenna, add it in place, kind of pointing in the same direction if you want. So I finished off this card just like I did the other. I used the Big Thanks die with white and gold cardstock, and then I added some little gemstones. Those are just gold sparkly gemstones and a Simon Says stamp sentiment strip underneath. So again, I'm allowing a lot of the background to show. This one doesn't have the layered look, but I really liked how it was soft, and I wanted to make sure a lot of it showed. All right, now let's look at a few completed cards. This is one that I did with the sun. Now I ended up making this an odd size. It's about 6 inches tall, or 6¼ inches tall, by about 4 inches wide. So I didn't have an envelope for that. So what I chose is a 5x7 envelope, and I'm trimming it down to fit. Sometimes I trim the side of the envelope to make it not as wide. This time I trimmed off the bottom of the envelope to make it not as tall. Now I just put some liquid adhesive right along the inside edge here and close it, and we have an envelope that will better fit our card. I could have just used the bigger envelope, but I like my cards to kind of fit snug in there, and this was an easy way to make a custom envelope. Let's take a closer look at the card. For this, I took one of my Sunshine gel print backgrounds and used a circle die to cut the face out of it, and then a slightly larger circle die to create a white mat around it. I then glued that right lined up into one of the other Sun gel prints where we did the layering. So we did the gel print and then went and stamped on top of it. And that gave us a few more colorful rays in the background. I added a Simon Says stamp You Shine die cut, which I used white cardstock and black glossy cardstock. And then I scattered some orange, yellow, and gold gemstones on it. I love that sun background and it'd be fun to watercolor too. Okay, now I just have a bunch of completed cards to share with you, all in designs that I feel keep the focus on the background. One idea is to take any of your background frame dies, cut them from white cardstock, and then add it over your gel press background and see how the beautiful pattern shows through. In this case, I die cut the frame die 3 times from white cardstock, glued them together so they'd be stacked and have some dimension. That allows it to stand out against that soft background. Now that die is called the Floral Card Front from Simon Says Stamp. I added it to a 4¼ by 5½ inch top folding note card, added some pearl gemstones, and used the Simon Says Stamp Big Thanks die again, this time from white cardstock and black glitter cardstock. That black glitter cardstock is from Pink and Maine. They have some really beautiful colors of glitter papers that are great to add as little accents on cards. And by the way, that little sentiment is from a Simon Says Stamp sentiment strip. All right, here's another using the same background die. This time I didn't add anything but white to it. That way the bold color and that pattern that we created would really shine. I wanted that to stand out. I did 3 layers of the white frame die cut and added the pearls, but this time I kept the sentiment very simple by just cutting white layered cardstock. That thank you die is from the new Simon Says Stamp 3D card die set. This allows you to make a fun 3D card, which I'll show in a future video. But in the meantime, I really like the words hello, thank you, and birthday that are included in it. All right, now this example, I used the super soft background that's in the blues and the purples, and I added a stamped image, a word die cut, and a heat embossed sentiment right in the center. Now that stamped image, I could have added a lot of coloring to it, but I just did pops of color to match the background in the hearts of the hand. I thought that was a great way to keep the card soft, but allow the sentiment to stand out. So the Love die cut is from Simon Says Stamp Hey Love die. It has a shadow die and the word love, and I used white and black cardstock. The sentiment that I white heat embossed on black cardstock is from the new Simon Says Stamp CZ Design You Are Loved stamp set, which has great encouraging messages, and I love that hand image. I think that's really fun and can be used in many ways. Okay, here's another design that I think works really well when you have bold backgrounds. In this case, I took a window design die, like the Tulip one here. I cut it 3 times from white cardstock and glued it together for dimension, and then added vellum behind it. By putting vellum behind it, it kind of mutes the background a bit so that tulip stands out more. Now for a sentiment, I used a thank you where I cut the shadow from white cardstock and the thank you words itself from black glitter cardstock. And I also added a few black glitter butterflies. So this is a good design that you could use with any background that you either stamp or create with an embossing folder or gel press or anything. The same goes for this example. I used the Simon Says Stamp How Amazing You Are die set. I cut the shadow of it from white cardstock and the words from black and glued those together. And that's really all you need to add to one of these backgrounds. I did add a few pearls and some little butterflies, but you could leave it plain if you prefer. And that really allows the background to show. All right, and for the final card, I really wanted to keep it soft. I liked the soft background, so I decided to keep everything on it soft. Now I trimmed my note card to be a little narrow so the dragonfly could hang off the side and still fit in an envelope. So the note card itself is 5.5 inches tall by about 4 inches wide, and then the dragonfly hangs off the edge. I added a white die cut circle, then I die cut the thank you and the Simon Says Stamp Dragonfly die from holographic cardstock and added it, along with holographic gemstones. So I don't have any black stamping or black die cuts, and it keeps it soft, but by using holographic cardstock, the shine really catches the eye. Very quick card to pull together, and you could do this with all of your backgrounds that you create. I still have lots of backgrounds left over from today that I didn't get a chance to use. However, I'll keep them in my extras drawer. I can always die cut pieces from this or use them for a quick background for something else I create in the future. All right, if you're interested in any supplies that I use, they are linked below in my YouTube description. Also, you can go to my blog where you can bookmark cards and videos so you can refer to them later if that's helpful. In the middle here, I have my gel press video playlist linked so that you can check out other ways to use a gel press as a card maker. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I'll see you again soon with another video, and have fun creating.